Hey guys, it's Matt from Freak Finder Fishing, coming to you from F3 headquarters here. Want to talk to you guys a little bit about how I approach fishing a tube. I'm a smallmouth addict. It's just something that I love to fish for. I know. Sometimes we get into some heated debates, me and Mark, because Mark's a largy guy, and that's okay. But for me, it's really hard to beat a tube when you're fishing for smallmouth. It actually turns out to be a great largemouth bait too. We had a great day last year on a little pond, firing a tube into some grass, and really had some good largemouth come out of it. But primarily, when I fish a tube, it's for smallmouth. And I kind of want to just talk about how I set up a tube from a terminal tackle standpoint. So if I'm fishing in open water, or not around a lot of cover, I'm going to fish a tube jig with a 90-degree line tie. So if you see right here, it's coming straight out of the top of the tube. Really good for open water. Not going to, you're going to be able to snap it off the bottom really well. You're going to really be able to get that tube to dart around, almost like fishing it like you would a soft plastic jerkbait, right? The other tube jig that I'll use with a line tie coming out at kind of like a 45-degree angle. That's what I really like if I'm fishing around rock or grass. I just feel like it comes through the cover a little bit better and doesn't get bogged down as much. And the other thing I do when it comes to fishing a tube is it's one of the only spinning setups that I will run straight fluorocarbon on. I don't like a braid to fluorocarbon leader on a tube. I use strictly 6 or 8 pound fluorocarbon when it comes to fishing a tube. I like a nice long rod. I use a 7'2" with a fast tip. The reason I don't like the braid to the fluorocarbon is I like that give that the fluorocarbon has. You'll see a lot of shows, and I know Zona talks about this as far as kind of cracking a tube. When you're cracking a tube and you're only dealing with fluorocarbon, that tube is going to respond a lot more delayed than it would if you had a braid to fluorocarbon leader. That braid is great for drop shotting and for other spinning applications, but it almost makes that tube too responsive. So I like that kind of delayed response that the fluorocarbon gets. So I'm gonna use strictly 6 to 8 pound fluorocarbon. And then when it comes to tube selection, this is just a simple 3.5 inch Strike King coffee tube. Hard to beat. It's all I throw. And we talk about color selection a lot, and I really try to keep my colors pretty standard. I'll throw a green pumpkin, I'll throw a watermelon, and I'll throw this color. It's got some green and purple flake in it, and that's really it. When I'm fishing a tube, it's to mimic bluegill, it's to mimic perch, and to me, you don't really have to get too crazy with colors. The other thing I'll do quite a bit is I'll take Spike It dye and I'll dip the tail, or Spike It also makes a worm and chunk paint, and I'll mark up maybe certain strands of the tail, or just the tips of the tail, or maybe put some markings around the front. I think those little pops of color, I think, helps that tube stand out, especially when you're trying to mimic crayfish or bluegill. Bluegill will sometimes tend to have that yellow hue to them, so I think that chartreuse Spike It really helps. But I fish a tube pretty much year round. They excel in cold water, and they're good right through the spring and even the summertime when you're probing deep grass. Especially when you're cracking that tube and you break it away from that grass, it's a great tool to use to get a reaction bite. But the key to a tube is making sure that you're using that fluorocarbon line, and you want that long rod. That long rod will allow you to make long casts, and it also, with that fast tip, it's going to allow that fish to take the bait, and it's also going to allow you to fight those fish when they're making a last-minute charge away from the boat. So give a tube a shot, keep your color selection simple, and don't be afraid to add in a little chartreuse dye.